So hi guys, this is registered nurse Chima on Titomi Chima. Today we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic, which is the female reproductive system. Now we are talking about the reproductive system. The reproductive system are actually group of organs that come together for the sole purpose of reproduction. We're going to be looking at the anatomy, that's the structure of the female reproductive system. It is grouped into external and internal. So first, let's look at the external structure of the female reproductive system. Now, looking at this diagram here, this is the external structure of the female reproductive system. And when you're looking at it, you can see this blue hairs that you can see here. What they are called, this part is called the mons pubis. This mons pubis is that fatty area where you can find the hairs. It is in front of the symphysis pubis. Now, the next thing you can see, this green structure here, it is actually called the labia majora. What do I mean by the labia majora? The bigger lips in the external female genitalia. Then we have the bigger lips, then we have the smaller lips of the external female genitalia. The smaller one is called the word labia minora. In the labia minora, we have what we call the vestibule. Now, it is in that vestibule now that you find the clitoris, you find the urethral orifice, you also find the vaginal orifice. So, this is the clitoris. So, this is the clitoris. This now is called the urethral orifice. What does orifice mean? It means the opening of that structure. So, urethral orifice is the opening of the urethra. Why this here is called the vaginal orifice, meaning the opening of the vagina. So this is the vaginal orifice. Important things I want you to know when we're talking about the external female genitalia, okay? There are some accessory glands that are located within this area. One of the accessory glands we're going to talk about is called the Bartholin's gland. And this Bartholin's gland is located at the side of the vagina. So this is the Bartholin's gland. I'm going to label it here. We have the Bartholin's gland. Then we have the Skin's duct. The Skin's duct is located at the side of the urethra. Let me put it here. The Skin's duct. Sorry. The Skin's gland is located at the side of the urethra. So we have the skin gland. Then we also we know that normally our anus will be somewhere around here. Okay? Before you get to your anus, this surrounding area here, this surrounding structure is called the perineum. It is called the perineum. So it is called the perineum. Okay? I will come again for the last time. The fatty pouch here, it is called the mons pubis. Then we have the labia majora. We have the labia minora. We have the clitoris, the urethral orifice. Then we have the vaginal orifice, the Bartholin's gland. The space in between this, our external genitalia and the anus, it is called the perineum. Then we have our urethral orifice, I've told you about that, and the Skin's gland. Now I'll be looking at the internal female reproductive system. Now looking at this is the structure of the internal female reproductive system. And it first of all starts with the vagina. So this black thing you can see here, all this here you can see here, it is the vagina. Okay? Then moving up from the vagina, you should also take note that the vagina is actually slightly acidic. So that's the reason why the sperm now, because this acidic environment now is what helps to keep the vagina clean. So the sperm can actually die from this acidic environment. That's why the sperm is actually in the seminal fluid, and that seminal fluid is slightly alkaline. So whenever it enters the vagina, that alkaline can actually neutralize the acidic environment of the vagina and allow the sperm to pass through. Okay, so now from the vagina, we have the cervix. Moving up, you can see the cervix here. So this is called the word cervix. This green part is called the cervix now. And this cervix is very, very important. Like during labor now, the opening of this cervix is what is usually checked in order to know dilatation of the cervix to know whether the baby can actually be delivered or not. Okay, which we'll still talk about it later. So just know this is the vagina, then this is the cervix. Then moving on, this is the what? Uterus. The uterus, this is where the baby actually implants, the baby actually grows. Okay, and if you look very well, you will see that the walls of the uterus, I used 3 colors to represent it. What I'm trying to tell you is that the uterus has 3 layers. Okay, it has 3 layers. This red layer that you can see within, it is called the endometrium. So I'm going to put it here. This red layer you can see here is called the endometrium. And this endometrium is actually divided into 2. There are 2 layers of the endometrium. So I'm going to write it down. The endometrium, it has 2 layers. And those 2 layers is called, the first one is called the stratum basalis. This stratum basalis is the one like beneath it. Remember that I told you it's 2 layers. So if we have, let's say that this is the endometrium now. Let's say this is the endometrium in red. The one down is the stratum basalis, while the one up is called the stratum functionalis. And it's that stratum functionalis that is actually being shed off during menstruation. Okay, so just take note. The endometrium is divided into 2, stratum basalis and stratum functionalis. The stratum functionalis is the layer of the endometrium that is actually being shed off. Okay, and from the uterus, okay, I've talked about the first layer, the endometrium. Now you can see this blue layer here that is very thick is actually the muscle layer called the myometrium. Yes, the uterus has a middle layer called the myometrium. Okay, then the outer layer is called the perimetrium. That is the perimetrium. Okay, now moving up, you can see these tubes coming out from the uterus, and there are 2 in number. These things that you see coming out, these tubes that you can see coming out from the uterus, is actually called the fallopian tube. So we have 2 fallopian tubes. We have the right fallopian tube and we have the left fallopian tube. So this is called the fallopian tube. Okay, what happens is that at this fallopian tube here, you can see this structure here that is kind of like looking like zigzag. Exactly, this structure here is called the fimbriae. It is also here. This is a fallopian tube, this is a fallopian tube. So moving down, it terminates at the fimbriae here. Moving down, it terminates at what we call the fimbriae. So I'm going to write it down for you so you know the spelling, fimbriae. Now, what is the structural importance of this fimbriae now? If you look at this structure here coming out from the uterus, this is the ovary. So we are going to label it also called the ovary. And the ovary is where the egg, or you can call it the ovum, is being produced, and it is being released during ovulation, which we're still going to talk about ovulation, ovulatory cycle and menstrual cycle in our next video. So make sure you do well to actually follow this video up. So in the ovary produces the egg, which the sperm is going to fertilize. But what happens is that after producing that egg, the egg moves into the fallopian tube. How? This fimbriae catches the egg that is being released by this ovary. So once the ovary releases the egg, what happens is that this fimbriae will catch it and keep it. It will keep it at a dilated region called, so this is the egg now, called the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Called the ampulla, this is the spelling. The ampulla of the fallopian tube. So once it is at the ampulla of the fallopian tube now, remember that the egg can only survive for 24 hours. After 24 hours, it dies off. So it is going to wait for the sperm to come and fertilize it. So what happens is that if there is a sperm after copulation, copulation means sexual intercourse. So after copulation, let's say this is the sperm now, the sperm will swim up through the through the vagina and move up. So this is the sperm here. When moving up, it will then move to the fallopian tubes. It will move to the fallopian tube, move, and get to the ampulla, where it is going to fertilize the what? It's going to fertilize the egg. Okay? So I will just give you another brief overview of what I just said. I said that the female reproductive system is just talking about how group of organs come together to make sure reproduction occurs. Okay? Now, and I told you that when you're talking about the female reproductive system, you want to group them into structures. You group them externally and internally. The external structure of the female genitalia, now you can see this is the woman now. She's lying down. So you understand exactly. So you can see from here now, you have a view of the external view of the female reproductive system. Here now is the mons pubis. Mons pubis is actually in front of the symphysis pubis. Then we have the labia majora, the clitoris, labia minora, the urethral orifice, the vaginal orifice, then the two glands we talked about, the Bartholin's gland, which produces mucus or kind of like a gel-like substance in order to lubricate the vagina. Okay. Then we have the skin gland also that is located at the side of the urethra. Then we have the perineum, and I told you that the vestibule is where you can see the clitoris, you can see the urethral orifice, and you can see the vaginal orifice in between the labia minora. Then under the internal reproductive system, I said that this black structure that you can see here, it is called the vagina. Now moving up from the vagina, we have the cervix. And I told you that it is this cervix that they usually check. They check for what we call cervical dilatation in a woman that is in labor, to know what stage of labor she is in and whether she is ready to push her baby out. Then moving up, we have the uterus. Uterus, now in this uterus now, it is where implantation occurs, where the baby implants itself in the wall of the uterus. Okay, and this uterus is actually made up of 3 layers. How many layers? 3 layers. So the outermost layer is called the perimetrium. The middle layer, which is the muscle layer, is called the myometrium, and the inner layer is called the endometrium. And I now said that the endometrium is divided into 2 layers. I told you that the layer that is located beneath is called the stratum basalis, while the layer that is located on top and is actually the layer being shed during menstruation is called the stratum functionalis. Okay, then this is called, you can see this umbrella here, it is called the fundus. The fundus of the uterus. So I told you that these tubes that you can see going like this, it is actually called the fallopian tubes. And moving down to the fallopian tube, you have this fimbriae, terminate at the fimbriae. Terminating at the fimbriae, what happens is that when the ovary releases the egg during ovulation, what happens is that this fimbriae catches the egg and keeps it localized at the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Do not forget, at the ampulla of the fallopian tube, waiting for fertilization from the sperm. So if peradventure there was copulation, what happened is that the sperm is going to move up through the vagina, through the cervix, through the uterus, and move down to the fallopian tube, to that ampulla, to fertilize the egg. Okay, so with that being said, I hope you understand the female, just the anatomy of the female reproductive system. Next video, we're going to be talking about the ovulatory cycle and the menstrual cycle, where we'll talk about how ovulation occurs, which we know that everything actually starts from the hypothalamus. You understand? So we're going to talk about it. Then we'll talk about the menstrual cycle, from the menstruation to the proliferative phase to the secretory phase. We're going to talk about it. So do well to make sure that you like this video, Comment down in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe.